Hey everyone, welcome to my review of 9, the second Chaos story map in Black Ops 4. Many people that play Black Ops 4 would consider 9 to be one of this game's highlights, and without spoiling my thoughts too early, I definitely agree. 9 is a very well made map that is great for beginners and hardcore players alike. It's simple to learn and requires very few guides to understand how to play it efficiently, and along with Voyage of Despair, acts as a solid introduction to the Chaos storyline. So let's get to it, and discuss the fan favorite 9. Here's a super quick summary of the story as of Voyage of Despair in 9. Alistair Rhodes, who is Scarlett's father, has been kidnapped by a mysterious cult. She meets up with people who have worked with Alistair in the past, and forms what we know as the Chaos Crew. They go to the Titanic for answers about where he was taken to, the events of that map happen, and the crew learns that they need to head to the city of Delphi in Greece. That leads us into 9, where the crew work with the Oracle of Delphi to learn how to unlock the way to the Lost City. They inhale some special gas that allows them to travel back in time and experience past events, and they are brought to 9. I like the story setup in these two maps, and it quickly got me interested in where we would be going in future maps. Additionally, the characters in this map feel about the same as they did in Voyage. They make the same sorts of jokes and comments towards each other, they all have something different to say to flesh out their characters, and to differentiate themselves from the other group members. My favorite character is Bruno for his dry humor and no-nonsense behavior. He's there to get shit done, and I enjoy playing as him for that reason. 9 takes place in the past in a gladiatorial coliseum. The main arena is soaked with splotches of blood from previous fights held. There's a crowd cheering for your accomplishments and booing for your mistakes. It's one of the most unique feels for a Zombies map. It's a very different energy compared to all other maps, and personally I find that quite commendable. The underground section is very dank and fantastical, with influences from every god's respective mythology spread throughout. Really cool stuff. 9 has by far the simplest map layout in Black Ops 4 Zombies. However, that doesn't ruin its enjoyment for me in the slightest. You spawn in the central arena and are given two path options through the towers of Danu and Ra. The Tower of Ra contains one of the shield parts, so I always pick this path. Leaving through the bottom floor of a tower leads to the underground system, which is structured like a circle with an interior section for the temple or pack-a-punch room. The other side of the circle connects to the base of the Zeus and Odin towers that each loop back into the starting arena. Each tower has a top, middle, and bottom floor. The top floor connects adjacent towers together with a bridge, the middle provides access to the arena, and the bottom floor connects to the underground system. Each tower has a perk machine on its top floor, as well as a mystery box location on both the bottom and top floors. It creates a nice symmetry within the map that prevents you from ever feeling like you're too far away from one point of interest. Unlocking Pack-a-Punch in 9 is a pretty fun process that fits the map perfectly. On the top floor of each tower is a gong that can be interacted with to summon an assortment of special enemies that drop apart when defeated. Picking up one of these pieces for each tower and placing them at the blood altar in the center of the temple will unlock Pack-a-Punch. It's simple yet never boring to do, which is one of the best compliments I can give to modern Zombies maps. Plus, completing each gong gives 500 points, which is valuable during early game setup. 9 also features one main wonder weapon, the Death of Orion. This is one of the coolest designs I've ever seen for a weapon. It's a literal scorpion that you hold in your hand that shoots electricity. It can either be fired as a normal shot that penetrates through enemies, or as a charge shot that consumes more ammo, but will stun any enemies caught near the first enemy hit. The Death of Orion can be upgraded in the Pack-a-Punch machine, becoming the Circuit's Kiss, with more ammo and higher damage output. This is a fun weapon to use and really helpful in certain Easter egg steps, but its killing potential feels a bit inconsistent at times. If you shoot it into a horde of enemies, it's common for not every enemy to be stunned by it, or for the charge shot to not chain properly. I'm not sure if this is a bug or an issue with how I'm using it, but regardless, I still love the Death of Orion. It's one of the first things that come to my mind when I'm thinking about 9. The quest for earning it isn't too bad either. After opening Pack-a-Punch, a wall near the bottom floor of Danu's tower will open to reveal a lit cauldron. Shooting the cauldron will knock it over, revealing a flaming arrow below the bridge connecting the Ra and Danu towers that directs you to another tower for an item. This item is the head of a statue that can be melted down by the buildable acid trap to reveal a spile. Then, after reaching max crowd affinity and maintaining it for a full round, the crowd will throw an empty jar down to collect poison from a tree with the spile placed in it. The cue for the crowd throwing the jar down is always indicated by the announcer saying, "A gift from Sir Ket." And honestly, that feels really satisfying to hear sometimes. Interacting with the mystery box after obtaining a full jar of poison will cause your next spin to automatically give you the Death of Orion. Plus, the box remains green like this for the rest of the game, which looks pretty neat. 9 contains a few new special enemies, as well as some returning assholes. The 4 Catalyst enemies and Blightfathers both returned from Voyage, with no changes in their mechanics or gameplay. However, one small tweak are the Catalyst spawn rates, which feel much more fair as opposed to how they were in Voyage, so that's a solid improvement. Blightfathers returning is still a bit stupid, but I can't say it ruins the map for me. There are also 2 new heavy enemies introduced into 9. The Brawler is a fast gladiator that will jump at you to thwack you with its claws. His swiping attack can hit you multiple times if you remain too close to him for too long, and can even down you from full health if you're not being careful. However, this guy isn't too hard to kill and has limited armor, so he doesn't cause much of an issue. The Marauder is a dual axe-wielding armored beast with a ranged axe throw attack to hit players from a distance. This ranged attack is usually easy to dodge as long as you're running perpendicular to its trajectory, since it only moves in a straight line. He's slower than the Brawler, but as you'd expect, he has much more health. Up close he can melee you with his axes for big damage, so keeping him at a medium range while avoiding his axe throws is the best way to take the big boys down. The last new enemy is the Tiger, a vermin enemy that can spawn in high numbers during later rounds. They have a standard melee attack like every enemy, as well as their leap attack, which can sometimes be extremely busted. I swear, these tigers can jump through an entire group of zombies to smack you and delete half your health. When the game first launched and the health cap on regular difficulty was only 150, these tigers were a menace. Thankfully, some patches have fixed their bugs, but an unfair down is still possible, though unlikely. Although not every enemy is amazing, they're all unique and fit the setting of 9 well. The diverse enemy pool makes this map play differently than any other. However, this can create an issue for high rounds on 9. With so many different enemies able to appear, spawn rates can feel overwhelming at times. Past round 20, you can have any variety of these 5 enemy types appearing either individually or all simultaneously. Not only that, but there can be multiple of a single enemy on the map at once, making later rounds very hectic. This can occasionally create some cheap situations where you're constantly overwhelmed by special enemy spam, and it can feel exhausting. It's definitely not unplayable though, and if you're the kind of player that likes non-stop high-intensity zombies gameplay in higher rounds, then I'm sure you'll enjoy 9. 9 has one of my favorite Easter eggs in all of Zombies, with some fun and challenging steps throughout and a stellar boss fight at the end. Unfortunately, some of the first few steps hurt the pacing, but I'll get to that as I explain each one. As standard with most BO4 maps, the first step is to unlock Pack-a-Punch. The second step is not as easily summarized, but I'll do my best to explain. You need to acquire 3 different items: bone dust, poop, and a piece of charred wood. The bone dust is found by finding a skull in the temple area, placing it into a grinder, and shooting it 3 times with the Death of Orion to power it and grind the skull. The skull in the temple has several different locations, and finding it in some games can be a nightmare. I either managed to find it immediately, or spend about 20 minutes and multiple rounds looking for it. Although I don't believe it's confirmed, it feels like it doesn't spawn in some games for no particular reason. I've had way too many matches where the skull didn't appear in the temple, so I had to quit and restart, which can be a waste of 15 to 20 minutes of the slowest part of the game. Finding the skull honestly sucks, and I feel no remorse calling it an inconsistent mess. The poop is much easier to obtain, but still occasionally annoying. You need to drop your crowd affinity to as low as possible, which can be best done by running into fire traps over and over again. Sometimes the crowd will take their sweet time throwing it to you, but usually they give it right away. The charred wood piece is found by bringing a Marauder to the spawn room to throw its axe at one of the flaming pyres to break off a chunk of wood. This usually works first try, but not always. You take this piece to the bottom of Odin's tower and leave it to be picked up 2 rounds later. With these 3 components collected, you drop the fertilizer in a bowl in the Zeus tower for a couple rounds, then at the bottom of the Danu tower for a couple rounds. Once it begins smoking, killing a zombie with the firebomb alternate ammo type will allow Danu's trial to be activated by standing on the glowing spot. This step would be fine if there wasn't so much waiting and time spent just blowing through rounds to progress. Maybe instead of waiting it could act as a soul box to collect zombie kills, but as it is now, it'll take you until after round 15 at the earliest to reach this point. The Danu trial involves destroying 3 blights, 1 for each floor of the tower. This is pretty easily done with a loadout consisting of a high DPS weapon like the Hades or Helion, plus the Death of Orion for crowd control. It's a pretty fun step that can be intense if it's your first solo run, but it's easy for me now after completing the Easter egg 13 times. These sets of steps represent the general flow of this Easter egg: solve some sort of puzzle for a god and then complete a trial. This can be seen in the next step, where you need to find 4 bullhead statues around the map and shoot them with the shield fire. This spawns in a much more powerful Marauder that needs to be killed. This is a pretty fun step that I enjoyed doing each game, although if you don't know the locations of these bullheads, it can be a bit annoying. The bullhead statues usually spawn in zombie barriers and outside of the map, but you might need a YouTube video to find them. Then comes arguably the most notorious step of this quest. While trapped in the Raw Tower, you need to kill 4 special enemies in a specific order. These are indicated by symbols outlined on the obelisk that correspond to each enemy. This step can either be free or very difficult depending on the order of enemies chosen. Any set that has a fire catalyst as the 3rd or 4th target immediately becomes more challenging due to them exploding if you get too close. It doesn't help that all floors of the tower are extremely close quarters. The potential for getting a Blightfather can also be quite problematic. This is one of the hardest steps in this quest, but it's why I like it. It requires everyone in the game to coordinate and work together more than any other step, which makes it that much more satisfying to conquer. After this, all players need to return to the spawn room to activate the middle pedestal. This will teleport your team into the catacombs, where 4 large screws need to be shot to transfer them up into the spawn room. Infinite zombies will spawn during this, and you'll be locked down there until all 4 screws have been shot enough. It's kind of an odd step and can be a bit annoying on solo without anyone to watch your back, so the Death of Orion's crowd control ability should definitely be taken advantage of here. Raising all 4 screws unlocks the map again and creates a soul box for each one. This step can be a bit tedious since it requires not only for you to have kilowatt on your weapon, but also to kill enemies specifically while they're being stunned by the ability, which isn't always easy. Alternatively, you can kill special enemies with that weapon to make significantly more progress, so I usually wait for a special round to blitz through this step. Completing these will unlock the Zeus trial, which is arguably the most fun step in the main quest. After activating the challenge podiums in the center of the arena, you have to survive a few minutes of infinite special enemies with spawn rates higher than my expectations for Vanguard zombies. No. The area is tight as hell, but you're generously given infinite specialists as long as you continuously kill enemies, so it's just pure chaos. This step is so batshit insane that it used to crash games when BO4 launched, but patches have since fixed this. Still the step I have the most fun with besides for the boss fight. After surviving Mayhem, it's time for another puzzle step. Using the Death of Orion, you need to shoot a set of 3 targets in such a way that one shot will hit all 3 in a single linear path. If this step had more randomization, it would be much more interesting, but the 3 sets of 3 targets remain the same in each match, so this step is more about knowing the spot to stand in and the angle to shoot it at. In theory it's cool, but the difficulty of trying to line up the shots on solo, as well as the inconsistencies with the hit detection of the targets, can make this step a bit annoying to do. It's not offensive in any way, it's just a fine step that I do simply because it's part of the quest, rather than one I look forward to. And finally, we've reached the Odin trial, which is a multi-phase lockdown in this shield area. On solo, you'll have 2 rounds of a variety of all enemies, with the first round ending on heavies and the second round ending on Blightfathers. Similarly, on co-op you'll have 3 rounds of a variety of enemies, with the first 2 rounds ending in heavies and the third round ending in several Blightfathers. The Death of Orion hard carries this step, since you can shoot it down one of the 3 laneways that enemies travel through and maintain complete control over that section. The left side also has a blade trap to help keep basic enemies in check, plus you have access to the shield workbench at all times. It's a really fun lockdown on co-op that I always look forward to doing, and can prove to be somewhat challenging with a full group since the area is quite small. One issue that can occasionally pop up at the end of a lockdown round is an enemy being stuck outside the map and taking way too long to respawn near the lockdown area, forcing you to sit around and wait for the game to fix itself. This usually isn't game ruining, but more so just an inconvenience, although I'm sure I've seen somewhere that this can bug out your match and force you to quit, which is something that cannot be forgiven. However, after this lockdown, you meet your team in the spawn room to teleport to the finale of the main quest. 9's Easter egg concludes with one of the most exciting boss fights in Zombies. You're teleported to a massive open arena and ambushed by an onslaught of special enemies. They send so many tigers, marauders, and brawlers at you that it can become really hectic if you didn't fully prepare for this boss fight. It's on par with the Zeus trial step from earlier, with possibly even more mayhem. After killing what feels like 100 enemies, which it probably is around 100 enemies, the real boss fight begins against an armored elephant named Fury, who comes bursting through the left gate like a bat out of hell. The elephant will trample around the arena, dazing and slowing nearby players. If you're not paying attention, the elephant can easily catch up to you while it's in full sprint mode and ruin your day. Typically, whenever it pauses its rampage, the people riding the elephant will throw down spears with slight tracking to catch players remaining stationary for too long. Spears hitting the ground will also leave flaming pools to inflict more damage if you run over them. Sometimes being hit with these spears can cause weird insta-downs or absurd amounts of damage, so my most common reaction to this attack is to stop everything I'm doing and hide on the other side of the central tower to avoid any potential damage. This solution does not negate any criticism of my previous point, however, as being punished with a down for simply being in the wrong spot at the wrong time is blatantly unfair. To take down this massive mammal, you first need to shatter its armor by shooting the gemstone in the center of it, then shooting the elephant's body or forehead when it's exposed. When the armor is removed, the elephant gains a new attack where it can charge up a large slam and send out spikes that move towards players, so you'll need to move the hell out of the way ASAP. I also want to mention that every single one of these attacks I've discussed previously all have their own telegraphs that provide players with just enough time to react to whichever attack is coming next. After dealing the last chunk of health, the elephant will stumble over and fall to the sounds of a roaring crowd and the announcer stating your victory. But then, you remember that there's still another gate on the right side of the arena, at which point the announcer introduces the true champion of the 9, Wrath. That's right, there's another elephant to kill, and you bet it's about to get its ass kicked. At this point of the fight, tensions are already high, and you're in the zone, so a surprise second phase against a faster and tankier elephant is just the greatest feeling. Although it's basically just a repeat of the first fight, this boss fight is so goddamn fun that I don't even care. I cannot express how much I love the ending of this Easter egg. Additionally, max ammo drops appear often enough where ammo isn't plentiful, but you'll never be struggling because you run out of it. If you're playing well, you should never run out of ammo in this fight. The presentation of this boss fight is top notch, with great music, loud cheers from the crowd, and a stellar concept for a boss, as well as the overwhelming scale of it all. It's an extremely well made boss fight that I have very little to complain about, and it's easily one of my favorites in all of Zombies. Now it's time to discuss the extra things that didn't fit into any other section. One point that I may not have mentioned in my Voyage review is that map isn't the greatest for new players, and it feels like it was made more specifically for veteran players such as myself. 9 doesn't have that issue and is much easier to get into than Voyage, which could be seen as a positive or a negative for 9. Personally, I think it adds variety to the BO4 roster of maps, so I'm glad it's a simpler experience. There's a trial system in this map that works as a random sequence of challenges in groups of 3 for a total of 9 each game. They give a variety of rewards like a self-revive, a free perk, points, and pack-a-punch weapons. It's a really cool system that is one of the best iterations of trials up to this point in Zombies. The Brazen Bull Shield has a really cool design and is actually capable of opening some good DPS with its Firestorm ability. It's probably my favorite zombie shield ever. There's also an upgrade for it, but it's a really tedious process that I don't even bother doing, and I've never been able to complete it. This map's pack-a-punch camos look gorgeous, totally knocked it out of the park here. 9 introduces the unique crowd affinity meter, which roughly tracks how well you're performing in a match from the crowd's perspective. The main things that will boost your affinity includes killing special enemies and rapidly killing groups of zombies. Conversely, you can lose your crowd affinity by downing, running into fire traps, and not killing zombies at a steady pace. Your affinity rating will dictate what types of items the crowd will throw into the arena, ranging from power-ups for high affinity to literal shit during the Easter egg quest for low affinity. It's a really cool system that doesn't appear in any other map, and its gameplay impact isn't drastic enough where you're at a disadvantage for ignoring it entirely. After the first few rounds of the game have progressed, the map introduces fire obstacles to the arena and temple areas to damage unattentive players. However, this mechanic has the adverse effect of always screwing over at the worst times because of how random it is when it appears. It can make later rounds of a match more annoying and can even cause an occasional down when running over a fire hazard is your only escape option and your survival is dependent on that trap not appearing. I considered placing this in the map flow section of the video, but it didn't feel like it 100% fit in that section, so it's here now. And so we've made it to the end of my review for 9. It's one of, if not the best Black Ops 4 map, and one that I often find myself coming back to. The setting and atmosphere stand out as being one of the most interesting in Zombies. The wonder weapon is cool, it's fun for both beginners and veterans, and the boss fight is truly amazing. I cannot gush enough about it. The Easter egg stumbles in a few places, and the special enemies can sometimes be a bit annoying, but you'll never hear me say that I'm not in the mood for a run of 9. If anyone wanted to get into Black Ops 4 Zombies, I'd recommend starting on 9 without a second thought, just because of how fun it is. Let me know what you guys think of this Zombies map, and also let me know which ones you want me to review in the future. I'm always reading comments because I don't get very many, and as always, thank you for watching. The Marauder is a dual axe-wielding armored beast with an aged rack. What the fuck? On solo, you'll have a. I can't say this! They give a variety of rewards like a self-revive, money, a free perk, points. Wait, that's the same thing. Fuck.